The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. This is Dina Moskowitz with SaaSMAX, and I see that we have a big audience today, and everyone is starting to log in at this moment. So let's give it a minute before we get started. But welcome to our first class in our series called Crossing the SaaSM, Building a World-Class Reseller Program. This is Lesson 1, and our goal in Lesson 1 is really to introduce you to to what it takes to build a world-class reseller program. We're going to start at a high level, and then we'll work our way into some of the real I guess, meat and potatoes of it as we go through lessons 2 through 5 throughout the month of June. And now it looks like we've got a lot more people on, so welcome, and we're going to get started. Here are some rules and format things to look at. Firstly, everyone is on mute, except for the organizers, Clinton Gatewood and Ted Finch and myself. Everyone is on mute. We'll be presenting first, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answers. Because you're on mute, if you have a question, please use the text box within the GoToWebinar panel so that we can have you make sure that we address those questions as soon as we're done. Feel free to type them through whenever you have the question, of course, but please type them through. We'll go through them, and then at the end of the class, you'll receive workshop files, and we'll send you a link to the recorded video as well. The other thing is we are going to go pretty fast. We have a lot of material to cover today, so we're going to get started. So, okay, Lesson 1. This is what we're going to go through today. We're going to do introductions. We're going to define the channel. We're going to talk about channel leverage and how it becomes your competitive advantage. We're going to provide an introduction to the types of SaaS reseller programs that exist today. Then we're going to provide examples of success stories, which will be very interesting, always seeing how things are applied to reality. Managing expectations, a very important piece that we think is a critical component of building a channel program. We're going to talk about the topic of channel neglect. And then we'll talk about the components of building a world-class reseller program. And then very important as well is the discussion of what we're going to be covering in courses 2 through 5, because you'll see as we go through that there's so much material to cover, and we're so excited to be able to provide it to you in this venue. But it's important, if possible, that you're able to participate in the remainder of the classes as well, because each one of those will really give you the tools, the strategy, the plan of action to be able to create a successful reseller program. So starting with introductions, I'm Dina. I'm the founder of SaaSMAX, which is a online, it's a marketplace, but we're also a distributor. And our goal is to match up B2B SaaS vendors with resellers. And as a result of that, we meet many SaaS vendors. We encounter all sorts of challenges. We hear all sorts of questions. We are constantly working with our SaaS vendors to enable them to create better reseller programs. So the manifestation of this course is really based upon the needs that we've identified that so many of our vendors have, and we wanted to present this type of information as affordably, as efficiently, and in as interesting a format as possible to you. So I'm really excited to be here and be able to present this with Ted Finch and Clint Gatewood. Clint, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Clint Gatewood, and I got a lot of experience in the past in building channels and getting channels moving and selling through channels and continuing to get those moving forward to make sales for us. So that's basically what I do, and that's what I'm doing for SaaSMAX here today.
Great. And Ted, you want to give a brief overview?
Yeah, I'm known in the industry as the Chanimal. I've launched over 450 different products in the channel, everything from Microsoft, Mitsubishi, Canon, HP, Sony, just the list goes on. And that's what I do all week long, is building channels for companies, including a lot of SaaS applications.
Great. And yep, Ted here, for those of you who may not have heard of him before, he is known as the Chanimal. He has a website called the Chanimal, and which stands for Chanimal which stands for a channel animal. And there's no doubt that Ted is one of the foremost leaders and thought leaders and experts in building channels. And we're very excited to have him here today. So back to the program now. Why are we all here today? Why are many of you on this call? Well, the key is that you're looking to accelerate growth, and many of you recognize that leveraging channels is going to help you do that. The challenges that we all face as SaaS companies, including SaaSMAX, is that inside and direct sales and marketing is very expensive, and digital marketing can often be a shot in the dark and very noisy, and lists are expensive to buy, and reaching out cold to prospects is just not always an effective way to go about your marketing. And at the same time, competition is proliferating in just about every category of cloud software. We're seeing more and more vendors coming to market constantly. And so the questions we ask is, how do we reach a broader customer base? And how do we grow sales quickly and affordably? And how do we get more feet on the street? That really is the type of question that every CEO and every CMO and head of sales is asking. And we have this little image on the right here, which shows a chasm and our little logo of crossing the chasm. And that's because we've identified that whether you're an emerging new SaaS company or an existing SaaS company, it's always easy to get your first and your early stage adopters. But when you want to reach beyond that and cross that chasm to reach Main Street customers, it's not an easy task, especially in the SaaS sector. Right now, we really believe that the SaaS sector is channel ignorant. Many of you, not you on the phone, but many in the SaaS sector don't really even know what the term the channel means. And those who do may still not have the type of channel expertise and channel systems in place to help you run and build a world-class reseller program. We want to make sure you have that. Also, many of you who are channel managers may be feeling a little lonely, that you don't have the type of C-level support or recognition or commitment to invest in and grow your channel. Those of you who are experienced building channels already know that it's not an overnight success. It takes time, it takes strategy, it takes planning, it takes tools, and it takes a team to do it effectively. And if you don't have the buy-in from your C-level team, it can be very lonely, it can be challenging, it can be frustrating. We feel that pain. We're here to also help you work with your C-level team if that pain exists, and we're happy to do that and step in and help you that way. Also, many times channel managers don't know about or are able to identify the right types of affordable and efficient distribution models and resellers to get to them, to build channels effectively. So when you define the channel, what does it mean to us and to technology companies? It's basically a very generic term that you would see used in any product category, where you have the vendor, and the vendor will either go to a distributor who then goes to resellers who then can reach customers. Sometimes there isn't a distributor in the middle, or the distributor and the reseller is one and the same. But in many cases, especially when it comes to distribution, you'll see that there is a distributor and a two-tier level, where you have a distributor, a reseller, and a customer. In some sectors, for example, even in the telecom technology sector, you may have a vendor to a master agent, to a sub-agent, to an agent. And so there are multiple tiers involved in getting your products to an end customer when you're talking channel. It's very powerful, and the reason why you should care about building a channel is that they sell actually 75% of all hardware, software, and services in the U.S. You know, Microsoft and IBM and HP, these companies could not go to market without having invested the time, the energy, the staff to be able to build partners. This is how they've gotten to market. This is how their products have proliferated into everyday business and enterprise, is through leveraging the channel. This sector exists to support and to deliver and to sell your products. But many SaaS companies don't realize how big it is, how powerful it is, and how structured it is already. As far as channel terminology goes, that's a whole other game. You know, just like learning, studying medicine or studying real estate requires different unique terms. There are words in the channel that SaaSMAX uses all the time as if they're regular words, but to those of you who are new to the channel, you may not have heard them before. And so let's just go through them briefly. The channel is how a company sells their product, right? Direct is when you go company to the end user. An indirect path is when you're selling through a middleman to a customer. A reseller is usually the term that for anyone who resells a product or service. And just so you know, not all resellers like to be called resellers. To them, they consider themselves a trusted advisor, a solution provider, a consultant, they may be any type of business. So be careful when you're referring to them as a reseller. Refer to them as the type of company they are externally, but internally you can refer to them as your reseller group. Affiliates is a subcategory of reseller where they typically are more of a referral source to you. There's an affiliate platform, which is a technology and a tracking code that you can use with your resellers or with your affiliates. Don't always mix up the technology tracking code with what the name and the type of reseller provider you have. Partner is a legal term, but we use it typically interchangeably with resellers, affiliates, and distributors, anyone who is comprising your channel. But many times by referring to them as partners, it's a much more respectable way to talk to them, especially in messaging. Value-added resellers are companies that typically add more value by installing or integrating, providing training, and knowing a lot about your product and really pushing it through with expertise on top of it. LARs are large account resellers. They're typically very enormous billion-dollar companies like SHI or CDW who are almost like distributors. They may have resellers, but they also deal direct with customers. System integrators are the types of companies that have development capabilities and will integrate your product with other types or potentially build more things on top of your product. Distributors are the companies like a SaaSMAX who are in the middle but have access to many resellers, or in some cases a distributor does sell direct as well. On the marketing side, we have something called MDFs, which are market development funds. Those will be touched upon more later in the courses as Ted goes through courses 2 through 5. But they're really important for you to identify as a part of your budget, what you're going to allocate to help support your resellers who are going to market. SPIFs are sometimes spelled one way or the other, but they're referred to as special incentive funds that you're offering to resellers as a means to get them kick-started or for a special bonus or for whatever reason you may have, a special promotion you're having. But the terminology is called SPIF, and many of you don't know that either. Co-op funds, again, is another type of marketing fund that helps you to help the resellers to do better at operating their programs that they have for you. And channel conflict is another word very important for you to pay attention to. It's something where channel conflict is when you have resellers that are competing for the same sale, and you want to make sure that you're protecting your resellers when they have a relationship with you, and you don't give their lead to someone else, or another reseller doesn't take their customer. So that brings us to, what types of companies comprise your channel? This is something that you're going to start thinking about heavily throughout this course. There are so many types of prospective resellers. We see many that are already in the IT channel, but we also see many that are line of business consultants. And for those of you who have apps in marketing or who have apps that are in a vertical sector, it extends to line of business consultants that you may be dealing with. So this is just an example of all the different types, and it's very important as you build your program to understand which types of resellers may be the right ones for you, and also to experiment and find out which ones you may not have thought of could be a good type for you. So for example, if you're in the legal sector, you may be thinking that you need more of a solution provider who's a strategic seller on the line of business side, when in fact there are managed service providers or telecom agents who are dealing with legal offices, law offices all the time, and could be an ideal reseller for you. So it's a matter of really thinking through and testing the waters with different types of reseller channels to identify what those are. As far as what is this U.S. IT channel and what's the size of it, well, recent data from CompTIA, which is the largest nonprofit association for resellers, it provided me with this data showing us that basically from a formal recorded level, there's about 125,000 organizations that they would categorize as resellers. As you can see, most of them are micro-channel firms. 110,000 of them have 1 to 9 employees and are out there servicing their clients. 107,000 of them, as you look to the left, are considered solution providers, integrators, consultants, system builders, or managed service providers. And so you'll be receiving a copy of this, but the additional piece to notice is at the bottom. There's a whole additional set, over 300,000 additional types of self-employed or sole proprietor executives who are consulting to or providing technology consulting or advice or integrations in some way or other, touching customers. And so this relates to millions of businesses in the U.S. alone that we can access through the channel by getting out there and establishing relationships with resellers. So one more slide on my end is that I thought I would want to share with you what are some of the specific trends in the channel. And this research was done by a group named Soft Letter Report, who also hosts a conference called SaaS University. And they found that as far as SaaS goes, recommender programs, which include affiliate programs and other reseller types of commission, retail commission types of programs, are 45%, represent 45% of the programs that are being offered today as reseller programs for SaaS. That 34% of the app vendors will be listed and working with an aggregator. We're seeing that go up, actually, because we're seeing and learning, at least talking from vendors that we know, that their goal is to get out there to as many marketplaces, as many aggregators as possible, so that recognizing that each one may be in front of different types of buyers or resellers, et cetera. We see that 29% are considering and doing OEM agreements. We see only 9% using a traditional wholesale distributor, and that's typically because those have high barriers to entry. They're expensive to start working with. It typically takes a long time to put together contracts for them. They may expect you to dedicate 6 figures to marketing development funds and hiring people directly to work within their organizations. But that's actually one of the areas where SaaSMAX is trying to change the environment and provide a distribution channel that is effective and affordable and fast for SaaS resellers. And then we see that over 41% already say that they have resellers in place, and they expect, the sector expects, looks like there'll be over 50% will have resellers over the next year or so. And that already 48% of SaaS companies are saying that they have 20% or more of their revenues via the channel. So considering so few have resellers and so few have a big bulk of resellers, the fact that they can contribute as much as 20% of their revenues demonstrates that there is success and there is reason for you to definitely build your channel. So now I'm going to switch it over to Clinton Gatewood, who's going to talk about channel leverage and how it's your competitive advantage.
Thank you, Dina. So most of us are here today because, as the previous slide showed, you're either selling to the channel today, you're considering, and you're just getting started selling and recruiting channel partners, or you're in the process of thinking about it and looking at a partner program and how do you put it together and how you do all the fun stuff that we're going to be talking about in the next 5 sessions and helping you understand how to do it. At the end of the day, channel is a competitive advantage. You do it properly, you build out a good channel, it's going to accelerate your sales, it's going to accelerate your profitability. There's a whole host of things that will give you competitive advantages, and depending on your application, how you go to market. When you look at how, compared to a company that's going direct sales, you may be combining direct sales, you may combine a channel, and you have to watch the channel conflict, as Dina was mentioning earlier in the terminology pieces. Direct sales forces are expensive. Hiring people, managing people, training people, turnover of people, how do you incentivize them, the manpower, commission structures, the real estate that they sit in, as well as the computer systems and different pieces and software that you put in place to effectively manage the sales force itself, as well as sales managers on top of it, and then the reports and everything that goes into just running a sales force can be very expensive unto itself. And if you're not very careful, your sales will get, and sales costs will get out of whack very quickly with the amount of sales that they're actually able to do and bring in. So it is expensive, and and the channel can give you a competitive advantage in your sales and having an indirect sales force in the marketplace. But it's not just enough in having direct sales. Whether you're going through the channel and whether you're going through direct sales and doing the sales yourself directly to the end clients, there's intensive marketing needed. You still have to market your product. You definitely don't selling from a sales slick, but people have to see your name and you have to do your branding. When you're looking at assistance, and whether you're assisting your channel, whether you're assisting your sales staff, it's a lot of the same marketing to an extent, but you're building brand. And if you look at anything that ever came out of Gartner, and marketing's a science. It's 6 to 7 touch points to get someone to really pay attention to you and to your brand and start to respond to your marketing. So you really have to have the marketing spend there as well. But it can be very expensive in doing it just for yourself and for your own staff. So the next slide, Dina. So as you build out your competitive advantage and you're looking with resellers, what is that competitive advantage they give you? They give you the competitive advantage that most of them have their own clients already. They're out there talking to people. They're a trusted advisor with their end clients. So they've already got the trust built. And the trust is very intensive, and it's resource intensive for you to build that on your own with each and every client that's out there. Depending on where your product fits and where you're going, your realm of possible prospects and possible leads and possible clients can be hundreds of thousands to, even if you're going into even smaller micro businesses, it could be millions of people that you need to touch, and it's very intensive to get there. Having resellers, they already have that trust built. They've gained it, and you can gain trust and you can work off the trust that they built with your own channel programs. So you gain the instant trust. If I'm the managed service provider, or I'm the consultant that's working with a client, and I decide to take your product to them, I'm going directly to the guy that's going to pull the trigger on. I'm working with the owner. I'm working with the C-level execs within that organization already. You don't have to research them. You don't have to find who they are. I know them. I'm going to take your product in there. I'm going to walk it right into the individual's desk and talk to them about why they should be using your product and why I should be the one that sells it to them. So it really drops your client acquisition costs. Part of the client acquisition cost is all that research. It is that marketing. It is building that trust. And then, of course, the repetitive phone calls and the working of the sales staff to get into them, and building off that trust to build even further trust to where they really will look at your product and then, of course, spend the dollars to go with you. So the channel will drop the cost of client acquisition considerably. They'll also drop other costs. It's amazing. I've built channels out as large as 5,000 to 6,000 active channel members that we're selling our products. And they will do a lot of other functions for you depending on what your business model is. You can look at the onboarding of clients. You pick a right channel, and they're technical companies themselves, or they have expertise in specific things like CRM or human resource types of applications, and they can definitely help the onboarding with the clients. They can help with the technical support. Some of them want to do the level 1, the level 2 technical support, and they lean on you for the tier 3 piece. You don't have to get into providing all the support and all the training and onboarding all the clients. And they're very innovative. You're talking to business owners. They're not like a sales guy that's just trying to close and meet his cost. They're very innovative. They're going to come back with you on ways of how it is that you're going to deliver out your products and what other new propositions that you may not even thought about your product. There's many times I've adopted my partners' value propositions when they're out in the field talking to the end clients because they know them better than I do. I knew my channel. We were 100. All the organizations I worked in, for the most part, were 100% channel, and they definitely had the pulse of the client way more than I did. So they can be very innovative for you. It increases your sales organization and your marketing and your staffing. They are business owners. Again, you have to continue to remember that, is that they're business owners. Their job in life is to make money for the company and to bring in products to solve problems for their clients, which then in turn gives them money. And that's what they do. And they do work solely on commission. You're not paying them a salary to sit there and just to sell. They're working solely on commission, and they're going to be successful on their ability to sell. And their ability to sell is going to be on what information you're going to give them and how you're going to help to enable them to be able to sell. But they work very hard for the money to make. They work very hard for their clients. They want to provide good products. They want to provide good solutions to their clients because they are trusted by those clients, and they're not going to burn that trust. but they work hard for their money. They're looking to grow their business, and they'll help you grow your business. And you're not having, they're not a staff member that is coming to work every day to pay his mortgage and to your office. He's not a staff member coming to your office that's looking to pay his mortgage or to buy his groceries and such. He's out there growing his business. He has other staff members that he has to pay for every month. He's facing the same challenges you do as a company, as an organization, in feeding the organization that is his business so that he himself is successful. When you look at a channel and you look at the competitive advantage to get there, it's about your go-to-market strategy. It's about yours, and how do they fit within that go-to-market strategy that you've planned and that you continue to plan in the future, and how do you dovetail a channel into your go-to-market strategy? It's not overall different than if you were doing it yourself. You're just going about it a little bit of a different way, but you're going to provide them you're going to provide your partners a go-to-market strategy to go along with it so that they can be successful. So it is about your go-to-market strategy. And at the end of the day, it's about what you're paying for client acquisition. Once you get the channel going and they're selling and they have the right tools and they're out in the marketplace, your client acquisition costs will increase, and they will come much faster and much easier for you, and the cost of those will drop. So with that said, and looking to achieve that competitive advantage in the marketplace, what is it you need to build a successful channel? Obviously, we have 5 sessions. And this is the first session to try to really lay the foundation for what we're going to build on. And we're going to talk a lot more, and Ted coming up here soon is going to talk a lot more about what goes into that. But it's a well thought out program. You need to design your program. It's not a decision. You wake up in the morning and say, hey, this channel partner called me last night. Now I'm going to go to the channel. I see a lot of companies that, you're out selling directly to clients, and one of your sales guys or you had called someone and they ended up being a channel partner or a VAR out there, and like, well, you know what, I do need this for myself, but I can really sell this for you. And boom, you got your first channel partner. And you're thinking, man, that was easy. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to do it again. And then you start putting a program together, and maybe you get 1 or 2 or 3 of them on, and then you're like, well, I just can't get any more. And they made the one sale, and they're not moving forward. So you really have to have a well thought out reseller program and execute on it. You have to design it. You have to then you have to recruit the partners, and then once you get the partners recruited, you have to enable them. They're no different than your own staff. Next slide, Dina. They really are no different than your own staff on those. And with that too, when you're thinking about building out your program, what type of reseller program do you want to have? The type of reseller program that you create and the types of programs that you have will dictate, in large part, dictate those organizations out there that match your business model, and that your model and revenue model that you're paying to them is matching their business and their business model. So you have to match business models as well as the way you pay, the way who supports and who does it. But some of the programs that are out there, and the most common programs out there, if we start at the top, is a reseller model, where the reseller is earning commission based on the revenue that's being gathered from the end client. So the end client, you're still owning that billing relationship. You bill the end user, and then from there you send every month, however you set that up in your agreements, you pay the reseller his commission every month. Fairly simple. He's out selling, and he's making commission. He's a commission-only sales guy for you at that level. Wholesale model. So, on a more of a wholesale model, the reseller is purchasing the product from you. So every license that an end client's using, you're actually billing the reseller. And then the reseller is owning the billing relationship with the client. And in many cases, what happens here is the reseller is marking it up to what he really wants to. You can definitely have an MSRP out in the marketplace, and you can set pricing, but he has some flexibility in what he does because he makes the money on the margin that he puts out there, and whatever maybe he can do the installation or what, but he's selling a product for what he wants to sell it for, and he can make the money, and he collects the money from the end client, and you're collecting the money from him. White labeled, so reseller might pay you a license fee to you, and you're branding the application to look a lot more like his own product, and it becomes his product. And again, all the billing and everything you have, your billing relationship is with the reseller himself, with the organization that's taking your product to market. And then they're going to mark up the product. They're going to decide the end client pricing. They're going to decide everything that goes into marketing it and selling it, and they're going to take it to the end client. and sell it from that point. An affiliate program is where, again, somewhat similar to the reseller program. The reseller earns commission, again, based off of you collecting the money from the end client, and you're paying an affiliate commission. I think one of the bigger difference here, really, in the reseller, the affiliate program, is two things. The affiliate program, a lot of times, is a smaller commission than a reseller model. And in a reseller program, or an affiliate program, what I've seen is they'll go out and they kind of make recommendations for you, and they introduce you to a client, and you're assisting with the sale, and you're getting online with them. You're doing a lot more work to help close the sale, and then you're giving them a commission off of that, or an affiliate commission, which may be, a little bit less than what you pay a reseller piece. And in the affiliate program too, these folks that are introducing you to their clients, they're not going to want to provide any support in most cases. They're really not going to want to do any setup, and they're really not going to want to do any support of the product whatsoever. Where in the reseller model, you're going to find folks in there that want to provide level 1 support. They may want to do training. They may want to do the initial installation. So that's how I really differentiate those two models. Next slide. So another key consideration in the reseller program is, again, who bills who. And we kind of talked about it. So whenever you're looking at the different reseller models you're going to have in reseller programs you put in place, at the end of the day, who's billing who, and who owns the billing relationship with the client? Will you bill the client and pay the reseller, or will you bill the reseller and allow the reseller to bill all the clients? They both have their pros and cons, which today I'm not going to get into, but they have their pros and cons. The other part when you look at a reseller program is, what can you offload to the reseller? How can you gain more benefit other than just client acquisition and more rapid client acquisition than just offloading the sales to the reseller? Will you give them the ability to do the support, or do you want them to do the support? Do you even want to do the support, or do you want them to? What level of support do you want to do? What about the setup and the initial setup of the product, and integrating the product with the other client systems that the end client has in place? If you have a product that's, say, I'm just going to say CRM, for instance, will you help the client integrate that with their billing system? Will you help them integrate it with other systems and their business processes, or do you want the end client who knows that client and probably sold them the other products? Do you want him to do that? So that's what you want to look at. You need agreements, so well-defined legal agreements. Other successful tools, in brief, are different reseller portals that the reseller can use. Different documents, PowerPoints, pricing, demo capabilities, trials. Look at them as your own salespeople. What are the tools that you provide to your own salespeople? And those are the types of tools that you want to provide to your resellers. And treat them like they're your customer. They're more than your customer. They're a business partner that you're going to market with. Next slide. So I think this is probably my last slide here, and then I'll be moving on to Ted. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to build it. Like anything that's worth anything, takes its time to build. When you talk about the support and the setup and who's going to do that piece, when you're talking to resellers, what other add-ons can they sell around your product? Are there some complementary products out there that you can recommend that they can sell with your product? Or are they going to be able to do training around your product? Will you let them do the training? Will you let them do the setup? So what other add-ons can the reseller have? I mean, you're also talking about a commission-only sales guy in your team, but you're talking about a business owner that's also selling other products, and yours is going to be one of those products he sells. So how does it match his business model? How does it help him add on sales to his other products, or how does this become a new product for him to sell to get new clients and to help drive the sales of his other products? So how is it that you can be part of that ecosystem that's his? It requires patience. Got to be patient with it. A lot of times these smaller resellers, you'll think they're not paying attention to you. You've got them in a drip marketing campaign. 4 months after you've written them off, they call you up and say, I'm ready to go because I sold it to a client. So you have to have patience. The other thing you need, if you're not the business owner on here today, or you're not the C-level executive here today, you need executive buy-in. It does require budget. It does require executive buy-in and attention. And whenever you're getting into bigger deals, it requires their time as well to help build that confidence within and the trust within your channel that they have the ear of the other business owner and that they have the ear of the company that they can go to market. And budget, marketing and sales budget. You still got to market to these just like you would market to end clients. You need to market to the channel. You need to do sales to the channel and bring them in. And lastly, you need patience. I can't say it enough. You need patience. You're not going to send out a quick email and think that you got the greatest sales pitch out there in the world and you can say it in one word and they're going to call you. It doesn't work that way. You have to, it's a partnership working with the channel. It's based on relationships and it's built on trust. And again, patience. And with that, Ted, I'm going to turn it over to you and get into some more meat of the product.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, Clint. What I want to do right now is I want to give some examples of some of the companies that I've helped build their channel program. And I try to find a diversity where there are a couple different lessons that we can learn from each one of these. And so let's go to the next bit. So I'm going to be covering shopping carts, cloud storage, different type of records management, and CRM, sort of some traditional ones. People are familiar with Salesforce, and I've certainly dissected their program. And then I'll be looking at a couple others that are some niche type products. Okay. The first one I want to talk about is a company that picked up from Australia, and they actually did FAQ software to start with. I'm not going to mention the names of these companies because I'm giving you some inside information, so keep that sort of private, but some of these have grown pretty well. So they came over here. The first thing we had to do is fix their value proposition. So I'm going to start pointing these things out because they're commonalities with most of the companies I work with. So the value proposition is, give me 3 to 5 reasons why I'd be a fool not to consider your product. So once we got that all worked out, we sort of built out their brand, we started recruiting. This is one case where the resellers really wanted their product personally because their product would help the reseller to build their own business. So that's always an inside track. The problem is that we pulled 760 resellers in a little less than 6 weeks. We did this with an intern and then quickly hired a full-time person. We could not get those people through the orientation fast enough. We lost about 100 because by the time we cycled back through these, some of those people, it had been several weeks, they just thought they were unresponsive. The biggest thing on this is that they didn't have the systems in place to pay them. So even once the resellers came on board, they had no way to be able to pay them. This is something, for example, that SaaSMAX, one thing that gravitated me toward working with Dina, is that she's got all these systems already in place, and seeing that I've run into these problems before, I could see where that is a benefit. Also, we couldn't even pay the channel manager. I mean, he was paid every month, but every month he would take almost an entire day just going through all the records trying to pull all that. So we got those things fixed and rebooted. The lesson on this right here is that, again, if you have a product that they can use, you may have a problem where a few come on faster than you're ready to handle it. So I usually recommend that we first only try to get the first 10 resellers. From that, we discover one-on-one orientations, one-on-one meetings with them. We discover exactly where the holes are in our program, even if it's already well-defined. Then we work on the next 50, sort of refine that process, and then we can turn it loose. And if you've got a product like that where you've got a lot of resellers, then you sort of blast it all out there and then pull them all back in, and at least then you know that you can deal with that kind of volume. Also, you must have those systems to be able to partner, to pay your partners. This particular company did very, very well. And then they received a $30 million VC funding, and now they're up to $125 million in funding, and they're looking for an IPO. The next company. Okay, this one over here, this is a cloud storage company. And so this company started out as number 79th in their category out of 97 competitors. After we got through this process, we shot them to number 1. They've held that position now for 16 months. So in this particular case, like typical, we define the reseller partner program. Then I usually use interns, sort of the secret weapon, and we recruited 79 partners fairly consistently, throughout the next 30 days. So again, it was a pretty broad market. A lot of people sell storage, so it was again, that's something else to look at, is how many of the resellers actually would even sell your product type. The problem in that case is then the intern went back to school, and we pulled in one full-time person, and he had problems, and we pulled in another full-time person, and his marriage fell apart, and so the whole program started to cave in, and continued to build out according to the schedule. So we created a different type of a channel. And so this is just to show you sometimes you want to get creative. We went after the traditional IT, But then one way to build out that IT is to form an alliance. So we formed a tight relationship with Amazon. So tight, and this is stuff that in the alliance section of one of the lessons that we'll cover, I think lesson number 4, so tight that there were over 700 alliance partners with Amazon. There were only 6 that got to put all their product inside of the bag, and they were on stage and were represented fully by Amazon, and this is one of them. So here's the lessons we can learn from this one. Is again, you have to start with a program well defined. If you go out there and the resellers see that you've got a paper bag for a program, they're not going to school you. You've sort of got to make sure that you create an impression right off the bat that you know how to make them money. Also with this, and this is why you want C-level involvement, you want to make sure you put a good stable member of your team that's going to be the one building out this program. Because if you go through too many people, the resellers will start to doubt whether or not your company is stable. And so you might have some disconnects or even some collapsing of your channels. Also, you want to look at multiple types of channels. So not just maybe the IT, but maybe you, the reason I go with alliance is because some of your alliances eventually start selling your product, or they become your primary advocates. They become your affiliate partners. And also what they do is they introduce you to their partners. So now let me show you the next one. Okay, this is one where we didn't form an alliance, but it was interesting. The first thing we had to do is we had to get their product positioned. We had to set up a good partner program. Again, those are common elements. And then this was a product that would actually add records management to Google Docs, which was a big, massive hole. Now, he built his entire model around the assumption that Google had 2,200 resellers. When we got into it, we found they only had 19 that actually sold Google Docs. That was a problem. Also, we couldn't recruit ahead of them. We couldn't go out there and recruit people to sell our application if they weren't selling Google Docs. They couldn't sell both of the pieces. So the entire model was built on this incorrect assumption. So this is just sort of a beware. Sometimes if you walk into somebody else's infrastructure, their platform, you're building it around it, and then you find out afterwards it's not quite what you expected. So do a little bit more homework on that. So this is another case where we formed an alliance. So this was the alliance with Google. And so they actually at least made sure that we're introduced to all of the 19 partners so we could recruit them. But then we actually had to start helping Google to recruit more partners and sort of jumpstart that effort. So sometimes you're going to find your channel programs are not just building your own program, but working with someone else, especially if you're part of their infrastructure. Okay, so again, there's another commonality here. Sometimes you'll find that alliances will help you recruit quicker. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this is now in more common areas that people are familiar with for SaaS because of Salesforce sort of heading it up. But if you're going to compete in a market that has a major competitor like a Salesforce or like an Oracle or a Microsoft or somebody else, the first thing you have to do is you have to carve out that space. So again, it's okay if you've got a CRM application as long as you can give 3 to 5 reasons why you'd be a fool not to use this one versus the big gorilla alternative. So in this particular case, this was also, both of these were products that resellers wanted because of their unique capabilities. And this is also a different model where I want to show one was based in the US, the other one was international. So the key on this is that if you're international, it's perfectly fine, but this company's time zone was not the same as the US. So in this case, their first US employee was an intern, and that intern was based right here where I'm at in Austin, Texas, central US. And so we overcame that obstacle just by planting somebody here that would help certainly be able to connect with the resellers during working hours. Both these companies executed very well. They both built the good channels. They were loyal. They were productive. So here's the lessons on this. Again, if you're going to go into a crowded market space, if you ship your product out to a reseller and they can't see a clear reason for your existence, then you're going to have a problem. So you must have that good positioning. Not only must you have it, it must be well articulated. And it always helps to have something that the reseller wants. For example, one company I went out there to launch was genome research software. Not too many resellers would be wanting to use genome research software. Another one was some really high-end risk assessment software that was $250,000 stuff, way beyond what your typical reseller might use. So there's other ways that we had to maneuver it in so they could see benefits of even picking up the program. Sometimes they look for personal benefits. Again, things like if you have Microsoft Office, then you can see that they would all come on board, which is actually a problem that Microsoft has because they can't find the sincere resellers versus just those that want their own product. And then there's some checks and balances we can set up in a program to solve that problem. Also, when we look at international or U.S., it's perfectly fine. I have lots of international companies that I take into the U.S., everything from Australia to China to Russia to Mexico. But we always have to make sure we have someone in the local time zone that speaks the native language. And then there's something else that these companies, both of these companies did. They executed with a vengeance. So once we set up that good program, they recruited, they just kept at it. And then they helped their partners with marketing, and then they did some direct calls, and then they really did a good job of taking care of their partners. So these are commonalities of people who've had a lot of success. Let's move to the next one. Okay, this is one that was planning software. It was essentially, and it was very interesting because we're hitting this right as the economy dumped. I've been doing this for a while. So the economy tanked. Real estate was crushing. We just received over 300% growth, and suddenly their sales were going down. So he was anxious to set up a reseller program to at least gobble up whatever market was left. And that's exactly what we did. So we positioned his product, got excellent reseller program. We recruited another intern. Again, this is just a dedicated body that was humbled, would learn quick, and would execute well. And in this particular case, his traditional market was not growing very fast at all. So the IT channel is one that some of the others had tapped into. This is one where the IT channel, as we started going, we were lucky to get about 9 partners the first 30 days. And usually whenever I see that, that means, okay, we got to get creative. So what we did is we found places that actually stored paper plans. And so all the people coming in to do their plans would store them there, archive them there. Well, we found out there were a lot of these. And so we recruited those partners, over 50 of those in the first 3 weeks. And then over the next year, we pulled in over 1,200 of those same type of partners. So we just had to get a little creative sometimes. If one channel is not working, we have to look at additional ones, or in this case, it was just a highly vertical segment of the overall channel. So here's another example of hiring an intern to run the program. This company did so well that they were happily acquired, and the acquired company picked up this intern who was working on his MBA, and they hired him as their VP of marketing. So he liked that. But he did a great job of building out the channel. And I only worked with them up to the first 50 partners, and then just sort of helped them a little bit after that. Once the bike was rolling, they didn't need me to keep holding onto the back of it. So the lesson on this one is, again, always good positioning first. Start with that well-defined, excellent program that can scale very quickly so there's no objections. And then the other part is if one channel doesn't work, then dodge and try and test a different one. Sometimes your non-traditional or some of your vertical channels will work well for your product. There's a large set of resellers out there that pull from. We just have to make sure we're hitting the right target. In this case, they were also very persistent. They built it out. It also helped that particular intern started making a commission on his entire program. So the bigger he got it, the more money he made. And he was probably one of the most well-paid interns I have ever met. So, and also if you take care of your partners like he was doing, they'll take care of you. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so as you see through these examples, there's some commonalities. Number one, is your product competitive? So whenever I say product positioning, I always use that term, 3 to 5 reasons why I'd be a fool not to consider you. If you can't articulate that, and everybody sings the same song, and when you go out to recruit your reseller, if he doesn't get that value proposition really quick and just thinks you're another Me Too product, then again, it's over. So we have to look at the channel holistically. If your product doesn't have good positioning, then figure it out, fix it. Otherwise, your resellers are just not going to pick it up. But when they see a product that's hot, it makes sense they want to sell it. The second thing they ask is, can I make any money working with you? So things they look for is competitive margins. Is there competition in my area? Will you train me? Do you have channel conflict? Do you have good sales tools? And then the third thing is, do you love me? Meaning, will you take care of me, or are you just going to hang me out to dry? It was much like when I was in college in the early 80s, and I used to build my own sales teams, and I would find my best friends, and I would recruit them and tell them they were not going to fail. I would not let them fail. I'd do model calls, coaching calls. I'd do whatever it took to make sure they were successful, and I built a large organization. Eventually ran the program of 350 salespeople. But it's the same thing when you're working with your resellers. If they know that you're not going to let them fail, then they can feel that trust. I mean, they know when you're returning a phone call, when you respect their time, when you're training them, when you're doing everything that you would do with your internal salespeople, then they can feel that difference, and their commitment increases also. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about positioning for a second, because I've talked about those three reasons. You know, number one is your product positioned well? Number two is, can I make any money? And number three is, you know, do you love me? So this over here is an example of positioning, and this is the quickest way to get this across. When I was at DCA, the fifth largest software company, was heading up the channels, and so we inherited a product called Crossfax. It was a stepchild product. We really didn't think we'd sell much of it, and one of our sales reps called up and said, Chrysler wants us to bid on this. They've got 20,000 unit sale potential. I said, what are they trying to do? He said, well, they're trying to fax pictures of their car. And I said, okay, who's the competition? One was WinFax, the other was GammaFax, and some of the others. I'd launched 5 releases of WinFax, so I certainly knew the strengths and weaknesses of the product. And so I knew that WinFax didn't have grayscale faxing. So I said, this one's going to be fun. So we faxed them over this document. This is your car with WinFax, this is your car with Crossfax, which one will sell more cars? We then faxed them to the next slide, which is WinFax had, next one, WinFax had a whole lot more features, sort of like everything including the kitchen sink. But they had a problem with sending broadcast fax. Because as PC Magazine down at the bottom pointed out, they've never gotten more than 50 out at a time because of the long-term memory leak in the product. So all it took was 2 silver bullets. The fact that we did grayscale, they did not. And the fact that we did broadcasting and they did not. We didn't have to have the hundreds of features that they had compared to our like 10. We just had to have the right ones. So if you're going up against the sales force, you don't have to have all of their infrastructure, all of their features. You might just have to have the features that the customer values most. So sometimes it's that simple. And if you can articulate this, get it across to your resellers fairly quickly, you've handled the positioning problem. Next slide. The next question you have to ask is, can I make any money? So I mentioned some of the elements of the programs, but here's some other things. Here's what they want to see. When they come to your portal site, most of the time when I go to the portal sites of companies that have engaged that are the larger companies, then I see all this product information. It's sort of like they want to just dump more information out there. What they're looking for is, do you have competitive margins? If you're trying to recruit them away from your competitors, if they're offering 30%, you're going to offer 10% less, you better have some really compelling positioning. Otherwise, it's just they're not going to go into your product and lose money. The next thing is salespeople, they like leads. If you've got leads, the competition doesn't, they'll give you a shot. The next thing over here is we need to stop treating them like our customer. So if they need access into the system so they can learn it, we don't want to sell it to them at full price. This is one of the perks that resellers just expect. But if you're not on the channel all the time, you don't know that. So we usually have free NFR access. Usually, actually, I require that they take a test or put some skin in the game. I find that they actually will use the product more. The next thing is the deal registration, which really just reduces channel conflict. And for anyone who's never heard that term, all it really means is if you've got a deal that you're working on, you register it internally in the company, then it means we're not going to call on them. And if any other reseller calls on them, they can still close with them. But the difference is you've got a price advantage. So if you're making 30%, you might make 20% normal margin, 10% more if you register your deal. Second is if they bring you to the dance, you're going to dance with them, not the other partner. So because all the partners, this is sort of the basics of it, so because all the different partners understand when someone's registered, they've got an inside track, they start to back off, and you don't have your own salespeople competing with each other. And so that helps reduce that channel conflict. And then MDF, most of the time I say it saves you money because let's say you're planning on a trade show anyway. The reseller calls up, it's in his backyard. He says, how would you like to pay for half of it? And you're like, great, send me half. And you've already paid for the trade show. So sometimes it's not always costing you money. Sometimes it's saving you money. It's just joint marketing promotions. And then the other thing they're looking for is and I've had too many people that tried to build a program. And I said, where's your PowerPoint? We don't have it. What about your competitive matrix? It's the second most requested item. They just want to know, how does your product compare? Just like the customer does. It's usually, most of the time, I'd say 80% of the time, it's not done. And then where's the market information? If you're asking for a reseller to step into a new market segment, they've never been there before, and you know something about that, you need to put that together. So these are just some of the basics that they're looking at. They don't want to turn around and try to create your materials. And then the other thing, they want a feeling of engagement. They want to feel like they're part of your team. Again, they're salespeople. They want to feel like they're part of somebody's team. Okay, the next one. Okay, so when you're setting up your program, there's 3 different phases, and I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to stop and sort of hit on a pet peeve before we get to enablement. Number 1 is the definition stage, the recruiting stage, and number 3, the enablement stage. We're going to touch on some of these by going to the next slide. First, when you're defining your program, Dina, the next slide. Okay, you have to set up your structure. In the program you'll see later, I'll talk about why you must have levels, that they create a program that's self-running. Otherwise, you manually have to deal with this. You have to set up your margins, your requirements. You also have to set up a bucket of content or your portal site. So this shows some of the variables that you typically put in there. You also, when you define your program, you have to determine what type of support you want, what kind of training you're going to do, how you're going to handle leads, if you're going to send any out at all, what are the requirements, and what kind of reseller experience are they going to have? Are you going to be hard to deal with, or are you going to have your contact information right on the portal site? There's some other things they look at. Let's go to the next slide. Then they want to look in your marketing tools. Do you have, again, that market information, that competitive analysis, product sheets? Do you have email templates? I mean, they look for all of these things. Essentially, this is like a full repertoire of deliverables that you typically have identified that you need to put this together. So the first stage we do is we just define what do you need to put together just to be, with your particular product, with your competition, just to be able to launch your reseller partner program. Next slide. The next thing that you want to do is you need some partners. And so, you know, those of us that actually remember Michael Jackson and don't stop till you get enough, that's sort of the concept that we go with recruiting. We got to make sure that we build that channel out and just keep it going. So we determine our targets. Sometimes people say, we need to profile our targets. And I said, no, we just need to find out who your competition is, which resellers they're using. The reason is because their resellers already know your category. So a lot less training, much quicker results. You can also tell which, if you're saying, how do I find my competitor's best reseller? Well, they're usually platinum and gold. If they're authorized, maybe don't waste your time with them at the first stage. Go after the gold and platinums. Also, it's a counter-strike. I'm pretty aggressive in building my programs out, so I like to have fun little counter-strikes. In one case, we had one company that had 2,000 resellers. We recruited about 1,200 of them before they woke up and realized all their sales just suddenly dropped, like it fell off a cliff. And of course, our sales increased proportionally. It's one of the things the resellers hated them because they had a terrible reseller program. They had all kinds of channel conflict. They didn't pay enough, all kinds of problems. So we first determine our targets, but usually we just find out who the competitors are going after, and then we profile those resellers, and we go out and find more just like them. The next thing is we build our database. A great source is SaaSMAX has some. Anytime that I've actually engaged with stuff from Chanimal, I have sort of a generic database, but it's not going to be. SaaSMAX has a process of matching you to the resellers. Mine is sort of just dump it all out there and see what comes in because we're just going for the first 10. And then the other thing, too, is going after those competitors. And I usually go to their websites. I have a guy in India that I use. He charges a whopping $3 an hour. And he is really good at scraping competitors' websites and sort of going through the process of pulling my databases together for companies. So I usually get the database put together in a week. So while I'm defining, we have him go out there and pull the database, and we're ready to go. Then we'll start in with, I typically use email campaigns, but remember, it's an email. So, I mean, half the time it's going to get caught by spam filters no matter what we do. and the other half, they're constantly bombarded. But again, with email, it's not incredibly effective, but it usually will get us our first 10. And just like I said before, once we get to 10, then we get our program, our act together, make sure we've got our routines down and everything else as to, who's doing what. Then we get to 50. By that time, we're polished out. Then we scale. We can continue to go the hard knocks, or we can form alliances. So, for example, I had a storage vendor that I was working with, and they had a hole in their product line that one of my companies I was working with had solved HP's problem. So HP asked over 3,500 of their European resellers to join their program. We had over 1,000 resellers that were applying. So that's what I said, when you want to scale, but you better have your act together and have this system and process done really fast. This is not common, but it's really creative approaches, but it's ways to sort of take to the next level really fast. So again, the speed varies. Some are very slow, like that genome research, or another one that competed with Corel computers that I was working with. Well, we had a total worldwide reseller base of maybe 50, and we recruited 27 of those fairly quickly. But that's about as big as it's going to get, but they were perfectly happy with that. They were high-ticket items. And then some fast, like marketing automation, anything that helps the reseller to build their own business, those ones we usually have a fairly fast response. And again, that secret weapon that you've seen in those examples, those interns. Even when I launched Netscape Navigator, which became the #1 best-selling product on the face of the planet, started the dot-bomb era, I only had 7 full-time people in my marketing department, and I had 9 interns. Some of those interns were so good. One heads up channels at Red Hat, another one heads up sales, another one is at Bain and Associates, another one heads up product management at one of the whole divisions at Cisco. So I've had another one heads up marketing for a company with 20,000 people in it. So these interns turned out pretty good as long as you can train them. So, and I've had the other one that I told you that he built out the entire program. Okay, now within the reseller, here's a couple things to remember. It is a 100% commission direct sales force. They take all the risk, they cover their own expenses, they often provide their own leads, they can sell a lot of competitors' products also. So it's important that we make sure that we have a high reseller recommendation rate, that sell more of ours than their other products. So the question, should we treat them worse or better than inside sales employee? Next slide. The problem is that we usually don't. Here's what we usually do. If we hired a new salesperson, would we not train them on our product, not provide any presentation materials, sales scripts, no collateral, nothing, no coaching calls, no model calls. We don't provide them any leads, no systems to help them to handle all this stuff real fast, no contest, no motivation, no contract, no. The reason is because we have some skin in the game. Yet these people are worth more to us than internal because they're willing to take the risk, and yet we would hang them out to dry. The next slide. So, again, sometimes I hear people, they start building a channel. They get a lot of resellers in there. They're not selling anything, yet their internal sales team is doing great. Well, the issue is channel neglect. They're just not doing anything with them. So if you paid all those resellers a salary, watch how your behavior would change, then do that behavior. And then also with every company that's going to move into the channel, they're always, should I take that sale direct? Well, if you do, you're doing it with a direct salesperson. That guy's got a commission, and he's got a base, and he's got an office, and he's got a computer, everything else. If you take the total percentage of the sale, chances are you're paying more for that sale than what you're paying for it if it's done by a reseller. So why would you not send it out to a regional office just like you would send it to an inside salesperson? So it's usually a comp plan problem internally. But otherwise, if you just think of your resellers as regional offices, you treat them exactly like you would treat your regional office, then the whole mentality of building a channel program is over. So the third thing you have to do is you have to kick in with enablement. And so on that, we typically take them through a detailed product demo. We make sure that we document and we train them on all the main issues, and we give them sales scripts, presentations, and then we set up regional promotions that work. We help them to set up SEO for their product and move through. Next slide. Also from an enablement standpoint, let's see Dina next. We also want to make sure that we're doing things to motivate them, just like an internal sales force. Again, it seems obvious, But yet this is where companies they just get lazy. They just build this out and somehow think that they don't have to do anything even from a sales management standpoint for people who are pulling money in for them. So the things that I was talking about, that's channel management, not channel neglect. If you do it, you have success. If you don't, your chances of success are a whole lot less. Next slide. Okay, so this entire lesson and coursework that we've put together is designed to help you build a world-class reseller program. So the things that we've covered now is really just convincing you on the value of the channel, looking at a couple creative approaches that, yeah, I ought to take a look at this thing and consider it. So there's more to building out this program. And so this program was not designed to be strategic. We get right down into the dirty, meaning we're going to send, if you're part of the whole program, which is now the pitch to the rest of the program, if you're going through the rest of this, we're actually going to give you the material in advance. And you're going to follow right along with us. So as we're defining all this stuff, you're actually creating your program or you're refining your program based on what we're going through right then and there. So we're going right to execution. Next slide. So the first lesson over here on defining a reseller program, we're going to go through all the levels. When we're through with this, you will know what levels should be called and what levels you should have. We'll go through actual portal content. We'll go through deal registration. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the different items. What I typically do is pull up a spreadsheet that shows it's a massive spreadsheet from left to right. It shows every single feature of a reseller program, and you're going to have a copy of that. We're going to go through that, and I'm going to explain what everything is, and based on your market, you're going to put a yes or no, whether or not you need it. If it's a yes, now you know the elements of your specific reseller program. If it's a no, then don't worry about it. If you don't sell hardware, which most of our SaaS companies don't, then you're probably not going to be doing with evals and dealing with sending product out for 30-day evals. It doesn't apply to you, so we cross that off. But there's no fluff. It's pure tactics. We're actually building out your program so that when you're through, you've defined exactly what your reseller program should look like. And we do that in just about an hour and a half. Next slide. Here's some of the things that you get from this, by the way. You also get the slides. We record everything, so you've got that so you can train the rest of your team on these things afterwards. We're going to give you a document or a kit that's got over 40 documents in it. It's got all the policies. All of these policies will actually be in one document. We're going to be doing line editing to that as we go through it. Again, this is very tactical. I'll speak fast so you don't get bored, but we're going to cover a lot of ground. There will be a channel worksheet, a partner follow-up worksheet, the reseller agreements, dialogues to recruit resellers, sort of all this stuff that I've accumulated from all of these years, because I did the certification program for the entire industry. So all of this is material that I cover in the certification. I'm just sort of giving it to you guys. I'm just covering SaaS specific. I'm not going to cover retail and other areas that don't apply to you. And then you're going to have access to a 43-page sample partner portal that has instructions that shows you how all this stuff is constructed throughout the entire document. Next slide. Okay, the lesson number 2, once you've got your program defined, we're going to go through and we're going to create all your policies. So we're going to set your levels up and determine what reseller margins for each one of your levels. We're going to go through the reseller application. I'm literally going to go through an application and an agreement live, and I'm going to have some things highlighted so you'll see exactly some sort of gotcha areas that you need to make sure. The reseller agreement that you send, you can take it, I don't practice law, so you can certainly recommend it to take it through your attorney. At the same time, though, it's one that I've used maybe 200 times. I already passed it through my attorneys the first time, but again, I can't make that statement because I'm not an attorney. We'll actually define your reseller policy, your NFR policy. We'll define your deal registration using industry best practices, because I'm the keeper of the industry best practices because I do the certification for the industry. We'll also go through and show what kind of training, what quotas. We'll review all of these. The next slide will show you some of the deliverables that you get from this lesson. Again, all the slide deck, everything else. You'll receive everything in a Word document, all the policies, the model reseller agreements, that complete kit with all of that stuff, and against your knife. Sorry, I couldn't help. SaaS margins, you'll know how to determine your own. I'll actually show you a document. You just go step by step by step, and each one will sort of help you to determine for your product type exactly what your reseller margin should be. There's no guesswork. It just follows a process. And then this over here sort of shows you the portal site over here. Let's go to lesson number 4. And so once you've created this, it's time to go out there and get yourself some partners. So we'll make sure we'll we'll talk a little bit more about positioning, but then I'll also give you some links with some content to really wrap that up and make sure it's tight. We'll talk about that strategy and who you go after first. We'll go through reseller emails and templates, calling scripts, and then right into your systems itself. Because even if you only hire 10 resellers, if the average reseller has 10 salespeople, that's 30 people you've got to track. And so how do we track this? That's part of what we're going to do, is a very systematic approach to knocking this thing out. Then when I talk about all this key about sort of building it up and really blowing your program out, talk about alliances, I'll actually show you why you need them, how to identify, who to contact, how to formalize, how to do all this, and then I'll send you over to a video that will give you an hour's worth of material on how to build that, and you'll have a complete kit. Let's go to the slide to show you what the deliverables are with lesson number 4. Okay, so you'll receive the positioning kit, the video, the tracking worksheets, the database tips, even how to set that stuff up. All of these are little tiny details that everybody gets messed up on, and they wipe out an entire database because they forgot to get their levels, so they have no. So I just go through all of that stuff with you, just straighten it all out at once. Then with the Alliance Kit, there's over a dozen documents and everything else. Okay, the next slide over here, lesson number 5, is now you've got these partners, you've got to take care of them. So I give you forms and processes to follow up. We talk about what you must cover in the initial orientation, about how to give your own demo as a model call to make sure it's persuasive. I give you an actual script on taking somebody through the sample portal site that I go. What should you cover? What level of detail? The rules, the timelines, how you disseminate your leads. I have an 8-step process of how I disseminate those, how I send it out to the customer, what the customer gets, what the reseller gets, and then the different roles within the organization, because as this starts to build out, you've got to sort of define roles, and then how to motivate your channel, what works, what doesn't work, what's a waste of time and effort, and then your certification levels and how to sort of transition your program as it starts to grow from a baby program to a very mature program, and even setting up eventually partner counselors to refine it, find holes. The last set of deliverables that you get on this, next slide, is, again, always the videos, always the slides. You get the workshops, the orientation scripts, the demos. I mean, that whole big kit of all that stuff, we're just going to go through this. But, I mean, you actually have marketing templates for website SEO so they can get their local leads, how they would introduce the product, all these things that could take you decades to fine-tune is exactly, you're getting all the same stuff that you get for this certification, but you're just getting it completely tailored to SaaS, and you don't have to take a test afterwards. Okay, the next slide over here. Okay, so this summarizes everything that you're going to be getting in sort of the first set of this course. Let's open it up to questions. I already see some that are in here, and let me turn it back over to Dina.
Excellent. Ted, that was great, and it's great to see how many of you are on this call as well as stayed on this call, because as you can see, there is so much important information and such a great holistic view of what it takes to build your world-class reseller channel is. And we really encourage you to continue with us in lessons 2 through 5, because Ted's going to really make this a hands-on, no-holds-barred approach to building your reseller program. So as far as questions go for right now, I just want to first say that to sign up for the additional classes, you just simply go to crossingthesasm.com. Also want to offer, for those of you who are not members of SaaSMAX right now, there is a member-only discount. But since you've been on this class already and you speak with us in advance, we can do what we can to give you that member discount as well. We want you to build great reseller programs. So now, questions that I see came along during this, and let me try to put them in some order. One of them, Ted, is what is the best process for differentiating who could be a reseller versus an affiliate?
Well, I usually define that really quickly. An affiliate refers, a reseller closes the deal.
Fair enough. Okay. Someone said it looks like they have a CRM application. I actually recognize them. It says, let's say we want to promote our CRM to resellers who already sell a competing product. Is it good practice to reach out to them or create a new market?
Oh, I'd go right after them. I don't have any hesitancy. The first thing you have to do is make sure that you have good positioning. Again, you can answer those 3 to 5 reasons. I've worked with multiple CRM companies. Besides, I was the original VP of marketing for Goldmine, which had over 1 million customers before we flipped the company and the 2 founders went into permanent retirement. So that is, in this particular case, I would just get your positioning down so you know the angle of attack, and then I would go right after those. I would not try to create a new market from scratch. There's no reason to.
I would absolutely agree. Okay, another question was a company, it was actually in a couple of different questions. So to set our margins or commissions, are there any best practices that are rules of thumb that you know of?
Well, I have a systematic process. Number one is I compile my competitors' margins. The next thing is I look for like products that if you can't find anyone exactly like yours, fine. If you compare to Oracle or Salesforce or somebody else, even if you're not their direct competitor, they've set an expectation for margins. So I find out what they are. The next thing is determine how much to pay by level. Let's say 10% for affiliate, 20% authorized, 30% gold, 40% platinum. Don't use those numbers. Those are just placeholders. The next thing after that is we examine the behavior that we want to reinforce. Meaning, do we want them to sell it 1 year or sell it multiple years? We have to watch out. Salesforce, for example, set it up where resellers only got a commission the first year. The second year, those same resellers went to their accounts because they didn't make maintenance and things that they're used to, ongoing revenue, and they tried to switch them to a new CRM. It was a perfect time for us to come in and recruit those resellers to somebody else. And then the next year, but if that company, they made continuous revenue, then they would, then the reseller would stick with them. So there's a lot of other things that I go through on this. How quick do you pay? Who collects and who pays who, and all that kind of stuff. In one of the sessions, we're going to go through all of those margins. We're going to cover every one of these, and you'll have a document that explains. You just go down through the process and you see which one applies, and it will tell you what your margin should be based by the time you get to the bottom of the document.
Excellent, excellent. And I know that's a really important session to be in, because I would say that at least 50% of the SaaS vendors who join SaaSMAX and start listing their products there and their reseller programs ask us. And that's why it's so great that we're offering this program, is because as SaaSMAX, we can give you certain information and we can delve in on consulting level agreements with you to really help you dig in. But otherwise, for you to have the tools to really assess and pull these programs together on your own, based upon strategy and based upon really knowing where your competition is and how your product and your pricing is structured, it makes a world of difference, and we want you to own that process. And here's the next question, which actually I think is very relevant here. And I'll start it by saying I'm sure that many of you think it can be overwhelming to create a reseller program like this. There's so much information, Ted, that you provided here that's necessary. But can they actually accomplish this all in the next 4 sessions?
Yeah. Yeah. In my particular case, to define a program typically takes me an hour. To go through and to determine all the policies, that usually takes 2 hours, but if I'm narrowed in, like I'll be on this, then it'll take about 90 minutes. So far as getting a program set up and getting a program defined, I do it all the time. I usually work with 6 to 16 companies simultaneously. Right now I've got 12. And when I go through this channel part, I just cover that much ground that fast and it's thorough. And part of this, because you've got all the worksheets and everything else, you sort of know how to make sense of all of this stuff.
Right. Okay, great. Another question from one of our international or foreign-based SaaS vendors. They said, we're not in the U.S. How much success can we have building a reseller program without a U.S. team?
I don't have any problem with companies. Again, I need to park at least one person here. That's all it takes. Give me one person here that's full-time. I usually try to pull in a full-time intern, and I can build a program out around them. That one company that I told you, that was the shopping cart company. Michael Curving was their intern. And so as we built that program out, obviously it did pretty well. And then the first employee that we hired after that was full-time was a full-time channel person. Within 6 months, they had 22 people sitting here in an office in Austin, Texas. Now they've got a whole lot more. But yeah, we built it out. And there's a stage, and even in that particular case, you know, people from Australia moved here because this is where all the action was. So I would probably say that 25% of all my companies, I'm bringing them in from out of the country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Here's another question that might be a little detailed, and it's probably going to be, the answer is going to be as you work through your exercises in the classes ahead, you'll know this more obviously. But the question is, would you recommend a one-time payout for our affiliates and then a recurring margin for resellers?
That's the exact content that I cover in that particular meeting. Because remember those questions where I started to go through this, and then how quick do you pay, who collects, who pays, when you're through, how do you do all of that? There are some common models that I use, but the biggest thing I try to do is I just use that mantra, what behavior do you want from your salespeople? If you want them to stick with you, a lot of times I try to match it as close as possible to the company's model. And if they have internal sales, then I try to match those channel and internal sales exactly. That's what Salesforce does also. At least that's what the senior vice president told me when I interviewed him on the phone. So there's more than this. Is probably more than we can cover in the questions here. But that's the whole section when we cover pricing and margins. We'll solve all of that.
Yeah. We've got about 3 more questions similar to that with different unique twists based probably upon their pricing plans. And I would say that, you know, attend the next few courses and we will answer those questions. That's exactly the type of stuff we want you to know the answers to. We want you to figure out, because the more successful you are in crafting what your compensation plans are to your resellers, the better you're going to be at working with them, communicating with them, incentivizing them, and engaging them. So, yeah, please do make sure to attend those specific courses if you can. Even if you sign up and aren't able to make it, we will be able to still send you the recorded version of that, and you will be able to walk through it again and again or work on it with your team. Let's see. Yeah, we just keep getting more questions about lifetime commissions versus upfront. Similarly, same thing, rather than go through each one of these individually, definitely please come through to the featured classes. I think that you will gain a lot, and this will really help you get your reseller programs to the next level. So, you know, and another competitive advantage is the fact that you are on this, this course and this series of courses. I think it's going to make a big difference between how you set yourselves up and position yourselves in the market as you build your reseller programs in comparison to your competitors. So, you know, congratulations on taking these steps. I think we're going to wrap it up for right now. We're just about at the end of our allotted time for all of you. And again, to sign up for the next courses, you just go to crossingthesasm, SAASM.com, and make sure to feel free to sign up as a member for these classes. And if you have any questions or problems with that, let us know. But we look forward to the next year. The next one is Friday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time. And for those of you overseas, please just verify that you have the right time. And then we have them for the next 4 Fridays in a row. So thank you again. And Ted and Clint, thank you both. I'm very excited to be able to offer this. And have a great day, everyone. We will send you the recording to this, a link to the recording, so that you can review it again. And hopefully we'll see most of you on Friday. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.